Have you ever felt overwhelmed with all that's going on in the world? Sometimes we don't realize that we can make a difference. My name is Debbie Van Grieken, and it is my hope to inspire you to take small steps towards social impact. Join us each week as we have conversations with those who have taken simple steps towards living a more sustainable and socially conscious lifestyle. If you want to make social impact, let's start small. The Small Steps podcast is proudly sponsored by Moya Shea Products. As a listener, enjoy 15% off your online purchase. Use code SMALLSTEPS15 at checkout. At Moya, we believe in people helping people. Supporting the local and global communities that help our organization succeed is very important to us. We apply a fair trade framework when purchasing raw materials, supporting farmers and families. Thinking global and acting local, Moya works with organizations to better the lives of children through education and fair trade. Are you looking for the best moisturizer for beautiful, healthy, glowing skin? Our Shea products are superb moisturizers and have exceptional healing properties for those suffering from skin issues. Check out these products and our wellness line at moyasheabutter.com. I'm so excited to be joined today by Christal Earle. Christal has been a lifelong social entrepreneur. As a co-founder of Live Different, an international youth humanitarian charity, she was first introduced to landfill workers in vulnerable parts of the world. What started out as a passion for social equality has grown into a love for people and the planet. In 2017, she launched Brave Souls with $250. Working with local artisans in the Dominican Republic, Brave Souls creates handcrafted shoes with upcycled tire soles and upcycled accessories, and is focused on providing opportunities for their customers and fans to love the story behind what they own. So I'm so excited to be here with Christal today. It's so nice to actually finally get to talk to you. I've heard so many great things about you.
Thank you.
To know a few mutual friends or acquaintances as me.
Yeah, we're in a space where people are very generous with their time and their knowledge and in their networking. So it's awesome.
So, so we heard a little bit in your bio about your start, but I love hearing the journey and the story behind what made you start. So if you could just share with us a little bit about that to start off.
I, for many years, have been working in many different realms of social good. So I was a social entrepreneur before there was a word to describe social entrepreneurialism. So in a former life, in an alternate universe, I had been the co-founder of an organization based out of Hamilton, Ontario, actually called Live Different. That idea came to me and was birthed out of, I had lost my brother in an accident and he was my only sibling. The realization of the power of a life and the power of choices and the legacy that we can live then just I was already a youth worker, and it began to give me these ideas about how to speak to the next generation about the power of their choices and being part of something bigger than themselves. And so we were going in high schools across Canada. We were speaking to hundreds of thousands of students a year. I happened to, through a series of events, end up in Dominican Republic on vacation, and then got the idea to start to bring students there. So we were doing what was called voluntourism before it was called that. And in my time there, a gentleman came and found me where I was staying and invited me to come and meet the people that were in the local landfill. Some of them were living there and they were working from there. And he took me into that place, and it just altered my life in so many ways, for the obvious reasons of like encountering extreme poverty in the world. There are estimates as high as 70 million people that work in landfills around the world. And largely those people are undocumented. So they're very, very vulnerable. They're doing the behind the scenes work of all of our recycling on Earth, really. And so with these people, what was so profound and what I didn't expect was to have so much in common with them and to build such deep relationships that were built on our ability to be able to connect as humans in a shared experience. And so I would bring groups in and we'd be working alongside them in the garbage as they're digging through the garbage and pulling out recyclables to sell. And they're the kind of people that live on maybe $1 or a couple dollars a day. Two things very profound happened in that place. Number one, I met a woman there who, when I came back to Canada, I was back and forth between Hamilton, Ontario, actually, and Dominican Republic on the North Coast, just outside Puerto Plata. I met a woman who I found out passed away, and she had a young daughter. I'd known the woman, and I went back to find the family, to talk to them, and through the whole series of relationships, led me on a journey with my then husband to try to adopt this little girl. But my daughter was born into statelessness, and so we didn't have any of the proper documentation. And it's been like well documented. You can find our episode on W5 and everything about what has happened over the last 10 and a half years. But my daughter was denied entrance to Canada for 10 and a half years until this past March. And so I had to rebuild my life. I no longer had the ability to be able to be with this child and full-time and provide for her. And still lead the organization that Live Different. So I rebuilt my life in 2014. So I started the adoption in 2011. By the time it was 2014, I was raising her. My husband and I had split up, but we were sharing custody of her. And so we would take turns. Every 2 weeks, we would be with her in Dominican Republic, one of us, and we raised her. And so my life got put on hold and took a crazy hard left. But all the time, the one consistent, constant thing was that I was working with these people in the landfill. And you start to see things and you see patterns and you start to, you build relationships. I mean, I watched kids grow up. And one of the things I noticed was tires. And tires are a crazy biohazard. Mosquitoes breed in the standing water of tires. And in hot climates, those mosquitoes can often carry diseases. And in Dominican Republic in particular, they carry dengue. And dengue is a terrible, terrible disease to get. But if you're already compromised, it can be a death sentence. And so that was, I began to think about what can we do with these tires? And they're a biohazard because we don't even know how long tires are going to take to actually go back into the earth, right? And the only way they knew how to do was burn it. So, and I would have groups come in and people would be like, what's with all these tires? Because there was mountains of them in the beginning. And I would be like, I don't know, but someone should really do something about these tires. And maybe you're that someone, right? And in January of 2017, I was coming out of my apartment in Dominican, and across the little courtyard where our apartments kind of came around a courtyard, my neighbor came out at the same time, and she was wearing a really cute pair of sandals. And I did the girl thing where I was like, hey, I love your shoes. And I went over and I said, can I see your sandals? And she was wearing this cute pair of leather sandals, and she'd just come back from Cuba. And she's like, they're handmade. She goes, and I can't get enough of them. And they were really pretty, but I flipped them over, and the bottom of the sole was just like a plasticky, whatever kind of sole, right? PVC kind of sole. But when I flipped the sandal over and I looked at the sole of the shoe, honest to goodness, it was like a lightning bolt on the side of the head. I was like, why have I not thought about this before? And I knew through word of mouth, because that's how you do things in a lot of parts of the world. People knew of someone who knew someone who had a shop above his house, a workshop above his house, and he was making leather bags and stuff. And so I came to him with this idea for the shoes, and he found someone who lived just down the street from him, who was a Haitian gentleman who grew up. He was the third generation in his family who knew how to turn tires into sandals. And so this gentleman started making the soles of our shoes, and I launched Brave Soles with $250. I mean, I was a single mom. I had nothing. And on the first day that I launched Brave Soles, I did just this organic post on Facebook in June of 2017. I just said, I'd like to introduce you to Brave Soles. And on the first day, I got 39 orders from all over the world. And I was like, whoa, I think I'm onto something. But we had I owned a total of my inventory was 20 pairs of shoes at that time, right? So for that first summer, we would get orders. And one of the guys that I quickly hired, he would get in a little boat on a rope across a river and run the order over to the guys in this little village, and they would start to make the shoes, and the next day turn around and go back and get them. We had this crazy system going on, and I would go, I didn't even know where the post office was in Dominican Republic. And I had no other way to ship these shoes. And I was shipping to Belgium, New Zealand, Canada, the US. And I would go into this little postal office, and it was in the corner. You didn't even have a sign above the door. This is the National Postal Service. And inside was this little seat that was torn out of a minivan. And I sat there, and I'm holding these bags of shoes that are all packaged and ready to go. And I'm paying for the postage, and I'm buying the extra tracking code, and I'm handing it over to this woman. And I'm like, dear Lord, I'm handing over all these shoes. And you know what? They actually made it all over the world. This was a miracle. Sometimes it took a long time, but people were so gracious and generous because they were excited about the idea. And then we just started to transition into other things, but always right from the beginning was two things. We wanted to be able to do something significant with tires, to be able to make a difference with the people in the community. And the second thing was that we wanted to be able to produce it in a fair way that was fair to the suppliers, the creators, and actually fair to the people who paid the price in the end. So we've just maintained a very simple pricing structure. Now I understand now that I wasn't in retail before. I was in humanitarian work. So now I understand I've had to do like triple time to try to catch up on business principles. But I realize now that for me, one of the biggest things was that I had mentors along the way, and I wasn't scared to ask questions. And you just have to have a certain level of, you're excited about an idea, but you also have to be like, okay, that didn't work. So let's back up the truck and let's realign and let's see what does work. So Brave Souls it's been an amazing journey, and I'm proud of what we do, but there's so much more that we want to continue to do. So
absolutely. It's so incredible. It's like mind blowing. And I can relate to so much of what you're saying just because of the experiences I've had with, running my business as well. And, my business, I do a lot of work in Africa, but before I started Moya, I was also helping with people who were working landfills in Nicaragua. So
you totally get it.
I totally get it. And it brings me back to some of those stories and relationships that I've made as well. But, I really, love the name Brave Souls. Bravery, this concept of bravery. Maybe you can explain what it means to you and what the significance of calling it that was.
Yeah. So the name for Brave Souls came to me before the actual product. So I knew, when you get something and you're like, it's in like, for me, I like feel it right in my right there, right? And I knew it. And I knew that it was a reflection of, for me, it's become a reflection of two things. Number one, it's a reflection of my personal journey. I've found out when I look back, and if I allow myself, and if I'm kind enough to myself from time to time, I can remind myself that, I actually have been far more brave than I gave myself credit for. And at the time, had I known what I was going to be going through and all the crazy things, of course, I wouldn't have had the courage at the time. But bravery for me has been something that it's like a muscle. I just get to continue to grow it and stretch it all the time. And business is definitely one of those ways that the muscle develops the quickest. But the second thing for me was just the idea of so many people in my life have taught me about having the bravery to have a sense of dignity about your life, no matter where you are. And that to me takes bravery as well, because it would be very easy. It's very easy to look at where someone else is and see only the vulnerability in their situation and to feel guilty or feel bad. But my connection, if I was to be honest, my connection with the people that I've worked with over the years has taught me far more about what it means to have dignity and to have a hope and to not let go of hope. And that takes a bravery that no one ever talks about. It takes a level of willingness to believe just one more time, just to continue to put one foot in front of the other. I think of times, and you understand this because of your work in landfills, I think of times when I've been at the landfill and I've met women. One time after the earthquake, I met a woman who was pregnant. She's standing in garbage up to her knees, digging through the garbage, trying to find recyclables to sell. And she gave birth like the following day after I'd seen her. But she had the will to survive and to continue. And people like that, it just reminds me that I'm part of something much bigger. I'm part of a collective of humanity that has we have what it takes to continue to move forward. And that's that's my dream for Brave Souls as well.
Yeah. And, we're talking about all these principles and values that we have. We obviously have some shared values. So, besides bravery, and you touched a little bit about being fair, what kind of values do you bring to your business, and what do you hope to model to others?
Well, a couple things in particular for us is that, like everybody that's going to be listening to this, and like you and like I, or me, I guess is the right way to say that, the current situation globally it's created instability. It's created a lot more unknowns. We had unknowns before when we started our business, but now there's a lot more unknowns. And one of the things that I've always been mindful of is the fact that when we work with suppliers, they set their pricing. I don't come in and say, this is all I'm willing to pay. Because nobody's doing that to me. If someone does that to me, it's like, that's fine. Like, I have the agency to be able to say, if that's all you're willing to pay, that's fine, but that's not what the cost of this is. And so with our suppliers, they tell us this is what it's going to cost you. And we turn around and we set our prices accordingly in a way that's fair. It's like we become like merchants of equality and of equity, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is really the fact that I am really on a mission for sustainable fashion to not exist and for it to actually just be fashion. 120 years ago, you would have known when you went to get a new outfit. I mean, for us as women, chances are it was a dress or whatever. we would have gone to the dressmaker down the street or in our city. We would have known who they were. We would have known where everything came from. If we had a pair of shoes, they were well enough made that we would get them repaired. We knew the story behind what we owned, and we were connected to it in a much different way. And our whole connection to what we own has become so distorted and so broken. Fashion is one of the things in life where in the world of fashion, we have the opportunity to be able to help people reconnect to how they shop and to how they own things and how they share resources and how they see things. So, really a big thing for us is circular, keeping things circular, how looking at an item and how we make it and how can we use as much as possible how can we reclaim as much material as possible to be able to put it into this item.
Yeah. The circular economy is really important.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
On your website, you've said that the choices we make should be a reflection of what we value. And I really like that because, it's how I've had to, try to live my life as well. And like you say, we've got to kind of get back to this buying better quality where we take care of it, we value it, we repair it. But what I'm curious just to hear from you is how do you think that you can apply that sentiment to sustainable fashion, but also just to our everyday life and small steps we can kind of take towards that?
Oh yeah, sure. I think it all comes down to, one of the things is when we are determined of what we're going to value, then that becomes the filter that we see everything else through, right? Everything from how the products, what we put on our skin and this is perfect because of what you do with your company. There's a reason why there's natural resources that are available for us to use. So why wouldn't we consider continuing to use them? Why wouldn't we consider how we can cooperate with nature? Like that's just as much a part of the circular economy as everything else, right? And cooperating with nature doesn't adding more and more chemicals to something. Cooperating with nature means looking at what's there. Innovation happens in our lives and in our technology and in our world. Innovation happens within constraints. When we decide what we're going to be constrained within, then we have actually far more opportunity to be much more creative because we've put constraints around how we're going to live our lives. And so when we make a decision that we're going to live our lives more mindfully, it's actually very freeing because it takes the question out of a lot of things. When I look at how, and anything like right down to like, honestly, this is kind of a funny thing to say, but like even down to I'm a big lover of wine. I'm that person that actually reads and looks at and sees like, where is this coming from? How are people being treated along the way? Like, do you know what I mean? Because I'm going to appreciate it more. I've invested that money and I want to appreciate it more. My skincare, my clothing, there's just nothing in our lives that we are connected to everything we own. And it's just a very freeing way to see ourselves and the power of our choices, because our choices really do matter. Like they matter in what can seem like a small way. Rising tides bring up all the vessels, right? So by us just recognizing the power of our choices, we can do that. And actually there's no way that we couldn't be doing it.
Yeah. And I find that that's, so true. I feel like, we just had a disconnect, I think, before to what we were buying. Like I know for myself, even I've shared in previous podcast episodes that, when I started, I didn't know any of this stuff. Like I assumed that when I went to the store and bought something that it was made fairly. Like it never even occurred to me because I just wasn't connecting to you said, right? So now when you make that shift, it's just like everything that you look at, you're making
totally. Yeah. And it's you're right. And you totally nailed it, what you said, because you didn't know what you didn't know. And nobody's, so this is the beauty of where we're at right now, kind of as we're in like a transition in so many ways, I think, and a level of consciousness and a level of connection to things of what we own and how we're showing up. We didn't know what we didn't know. That's okay, because that was then. So where you are, like I'm also a coach. And one of the things we always say in coaching is like, where you are is where we'll begin. No one's standing here and you're not being treated like a naughty school child because you didn't, because your closet is full of fast fashion right now. That doesn't make you an evil person. But today you do what you can with what you now know to be true. And you start to make decisions from that point forward. And having that kind of grace for someone else also allows us to have grace for ourselves, because, in the end, we are actually at the core of everything. It's almost like we were scared to know because we were scared of how it was going to make us feel, because we're our worst judge inside our heads, especially as women, I think, those internal conversations. And so we create this buffer of cognitive dissonance around how we shop and what we own, because it's just like we're just too scared that once we know, we'll have to give up something. But it's not, to me, it's not like that. Actually, it's not about giving something up. It's about actually gaining so much more, because it's like my life is so much richer now that I have this connection to what I own and how I use my money. It's like I feel like I'm inviting all these new relationships and connections into my life, from the people who created something to, to like how I get to talk about it with other people and help other people.
I just love that. I relate to that so much too. And I love what you're saying as well, because it's my kind of whole thing with starting this is I'm not here to judge people. I'm not here to shame you. I want you to learn just as I'm learning and take those small steps. So maybe, it's time now that you're going to start looking at your shoes. Like now it's like, okay, well, maybe I need a new pair of shoes. So maybe now I can start looking at companies like this. So it's what kind of one item can you now start? What small step can you take? So I love, that we're on the same wavelength with that. I also love that you're described your position as CEO, founder, and chief optimist.
Yeah.
So what role do you find optimism has in your business?
Oh my word. And some days, don't you find that optimism is just the ability to be able to crawl out of bed and show up? Like I think oh, wow. I tell people, if you ever want to have the ultimate personal development experience, just start a business. Like this is like that. There is nothing that will grow you like having to learn to do things and consider, okay, consider other people and all those choices and everything. So for me, the optimism is around the idea that I want brave souls in my life. My mission personally is to be able to inspire people about their choices. Nobody needs me to tell them what's wrong with the world. There's enough going on that they can dissect that for themselves. But the role that I personally feel and that Brave Souls is positioned in is the ability to be able to give people, to lift their line of sight, I guess, is a way that I would want to say it, to be able to change how they view what's possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's just, I feel every day I get up and I say, okay, we can do this. Like, cause I feel like sometimes, just that overwhelm, sometimes you're like taking 2 steps and now you've just taken a giant leap backwards. Especially, we were kind of trucking along and things were looking really good. And then, the pandemic hit and we had order being held up. We had, our people in the village in Uganda, they couldn't even travel on the roads. They had complete lockdowns. It was, we were in the middle of getting our charcoal machine there. It was just this nightmare of logistics. And what really just that optimist feeling of, okay, one step, let's just do this one step at a time. And I think that really is what gets us going, right? It's just taking those small steps. As you reflect on your mission and the small steps that you've taken towards this big impact, what are you most proud of?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I am most proud of, and this sounds simple, but it's not, because, we always have such a story attached to why we say something, but I'm most proud of my resilience. Like I have had to rebuild and pivot and rethink and reimagine my life over and over again. And every time I grow and I learn a little bit, I have a little more grace for myself. It gives me the tools to be able to take that next step. So I think that's what I'd have to say is like my grit and my resilience are what I'm probably the most proud of.
That's great. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I find that people in our position and the work that we do and stuff, sometimes like we don't take those moments to be proud of things that we've done.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like I've been involved in a lot of activities and I've met a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself, a lot of social entrepreneurs, and most of the group is very hard on themselves.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, I should have done that, or I could have done that, or I wish I had done that and that. So I appreciate that you shared with us that, because it's really important to take those moments, I think. One thing I was wondering is, besides your website and buying a pair of Brave Souls, what are some of the ways that our listeners can start small now and take steps to support your mission today?
Sure. Like I said earlier, we are a sustainable fashion company, but we really define ourselves as being circular. So our mission is really to help people recognize what's already within their control to be able to do, And so I feel like, yes, I want people to buy Brave Souls products. Of course, I want that because I want to continue to be able to do what we're doing. But I also feel that our original and deep rooted mission is to be able to help people recognize what their choices are. So if they're doing that, and if we're helping them, we're also accomplishing our mission. I always tell people, a way that you could support us is to just consider consider the power of your choices. Take a minute and think about what is it that you want your life and your choices to be about. We hope we're part of your story, but above and beyond that, you have opportunities every day, all day, to be able to continue to make those choices. We're just one of those options. And we're not saying we're going to solve the world's problems and save the world with what we're doing. But we want to help people recognize that they can make the next great choice for themselves.
That's great. And I'm assuming I've seen you on social media, so I know you've got the accounts. So I'm going to make sure that we've got those linked in the show notes. So definitely, going on social media, following you on Instagram, Facebook, things like that.
Life. Yeah.
Things like that are also great steps. Any kind of holiday specials that you want to promote or anything like that going on right now?
Until the end of November, we have a special on that's 20% off on our site in general, but we have other specials going on throughout. So when people sign up for our email list, then they'll be getting the different specials. So we have things coming up where when people shop, they can give away a gift card for spending something in our store. We have a section on our site right now called First Generation, and we've had these shoes, and we had to change for some different reasons. We had to change over where our stuff was produced, and we couldn't get the exact products anymore in the way that we were using them in these other shoes. And so we have for limited time, we also have a section on our site called First Generation and Vintage Shoes, where they are it's an extremely great deal. So people are helping us by purchasing those things, and they're helping us continue what we're doing as well.
That's awesome. I can't wait to check that out. I was going to say thanks so much for doing this today. This has been wonderful. I've learned so much. I think what you're doing is incredible. You're so inspiring. I appreciate everything that you've done and told us today, and for being vulnerable and sharing with us. So you mentioned that your daughter was granted access into Canada.
She got here truthfully on the last plane out of Puerto Plata. Actually, she came in the middle of the pandemic. She's 15, so. Poor kid, she had everything happen really quickly within 48 hours. After 10 years, it came down to 48 hours of stuff. And so she lives between me here in Toronto and her dad, who lives out by Windsor. And so she's in school online. It's been difficult because it's just hard for her to even meet other kids right now. But there's a lot of awesome things that we have to celebrate. So yeah,
that's
very grateful.
Amazing. I'm so glad that she's with you. I'll definitely be praying for you guys as you journey on through this transition. So thanks again, and really it was great meeting you. I'm sure our paths will cross again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such an awesome opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Start Small. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found a small step you can take today. Make sure you share it with a friend. And if you have not done so yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you are enjoying this podcast, consider taking a moment and leaving us an honest review in your Apple podcasting app so more people can be inspired to take small steps towards social impact.